to another episode of the Life After Cardiac Arrest podcast with me, your host, Paul Swindell. Today I'm joined by Willem Pretorius, who's an expat from South Africa, but I believe you've been living in the UK for around 20 years now?
That's right, Paul. 20 long years in this cold weather.
Oh, I'm sure you're not missing that sun at all, are you?
Not at all. No, loving every minute.
Well, thanks very much for joining me today, Willem. I've got a couple of subjects that I'd like to talk to you about because you've had a slightly different journey to a lot of other people that I've spoken to before. And I'll just start off with perhaps rereading your first post into the Sudden Cardiac Arrest UK Facebook group, which I believe was May 2018, so about 18 months ago. Well, I won't read the whole lot of it, but I'll just read a couple of paragraphs of it, or sentences. Constant fatigue is an absolute problem that I just can't seem to get over. I am unfortunately by nature a person that pushes myself, so find myself constantly dealing with the result of that. I've not been back to work for 14 months now. Coming from a high-pressure job to just about surviving every day is a hard slog. And I think that sums up a lot of people who are in a perhaps similar position to yourself with the fatigue and the fact that you've basically lost your job from that. But today, I understand you've got some good news. So you tell me a little bit about your good news and then perhaps go back to what I just said about what you were thinking when you wrote that first post.
Yeah, sure. I think it's I think the good news is that after a few months of job hunting and fighting the recruiters, I've managed to land a job again, doing what I was doing before, but at a bit more of a junior level. So I thought to myself, I'd rather go in a little bit more junior, give myself some time to just adapt to working again, and then really just analyze, where I am. I used to work in a very high pressure environment. I'm not quite ready for that yet, but going in somewhere a bit more junior, earning a bit of money again, having a bit of social interaction is definitely something that I'm really looking forward to. So I guess it's quite a long way from where I came from that first post. I had been, like a lot of other people on here, gone through the fatigue problems, missed work, missed the social element of work, found myself every day pushing myself to do more and more things and then flagging for a few days after. I've come quite a long way from then. I'm now able to manage myself a little bit better, do more things as well than I used to do. And generally, I get it right some of the time, not all of the time, but I think the fatigue is something I've learned to manage a lot better. And on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't have that much of an effect on my living anymore.
That's brilliant to hear. And congratulations about finding that job, because I know it hasn't been easy for you the last year or so. And how did it all go, the interviews and the actual process? Were you particularly nervous, more nervous than you would have been if you'd just been going from one job to another job?
I guess so. It was very difficult for me. First of all, writing a CV is something I am not very good at. I've I had to get other people to help me to get the CV ready, but I also had to dumb my CV down quite a bit. I used to be an IT director, and I wrote my CV at an engineer level, which is quite a few levels lower. And then I found, talking to recruiters, they were wondering, but why am I going for such a lower level if I'm used to working at a high level? Trying to explain that away was quite challenging. They didn't really understand it. And the ones that said they did, you didn't really ever hear back from them. So I found that quite difficult. The interview process, I did find a good recruiter. She was really, really good. She spoke to me and told me what her concerns were. She put my CV forward. So my first interview was a telephonic interview, but the gentleman was a bit late and I was in Alderney, literally running to the airport on a phone call to this guy saying, trying to talk him through a little bit of what I am, what I'm doing, where I am, what's happened to me. We only had about 15 minutes, so we had to condense it down quite a lot. They then invited me for a face-to-face interview, which again was quite difficult in some ways because my experience is management, is project planning, is delivering, whereas this role is a much more engineering, very technical role. Um, and it's things I have done in the past, but I had to explain to them, where I was, why I want to do it. And I thought the interview went well, but I didn't think that they liked my skills that much. So I had quite a long wait before I heard back from them. And surprisingly, I was the preferred candidate. So I was really pleased with that. And I had a meeting with them in the HR today in the onboarding process. So I'm in some more other way.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. Did your the topic of your cardiac arrest come up? For why the sort of when was your cardiac arrest again? Can you?
Uh, March 2017.
So it's sort of like 2.5 years or so that you haven't worked. Did that come up in the interview?
I made it very clear to the recruiter from day one. I was very apprehensive of going into a job with this sword hanging over my neck. I didn't want to be in a position where if something went wrong, they'd go, "Well, you didn't tell us about it, so you're out." I thought honesty right from the get go was very important. So I told the recruiter about it. I said, "Please make sure they know about my health." We spoke about it in the interview as well, but to be dead honest, they weren't especially interested in that. They seemed to accept it, and they were kind of happy to just judge me on who I was then rather than this other baggage that I have, which I thought was actually quite nice. I didn't have to keep on justifying, this cardiac arrest problem. They were just, can you do the job and let's make it happen, which was really refreshing.
Yeah, yeah, it's very nice to hear. Did they understand the difference between a cardiac arrest and heart attack?
Unlikely. Most people don't really understand it. I still, like yourself, people just keep on saying heart attack, and it's infuriating because I know the difference. But I think you can't really bully people into accepting and understanding it. So I just kind of crack on with it now.
Oh, well, it's great that they've accepted you for who you are and what you can do for them, which is how it should be, really. So, good luck with that, and I wish you all the best for the future. But perhaps it's a great point to actually talk about your actual event. You said it was March 2017. Just wonder if you could sort of briefly talk about your life a little bit beforehand, and then sort of tell us about the day if you're able.
For sure, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, my memory of the day is non-existent. I only have what other people told me. But I guess before cardiac arrest, I was quite an active person. I did a lot of running. I was quite fit. I was training to do the Brighton 10K run. Work-wise, I worked silly long hours. I used to run projects all over the world, operations all over the world. I traveled everywhere. So very busy lifestyle. I try to balance it out by keeping fit. I'm a South African. I probably didn't have the best diet, so I'd always go steak over fish or steak over chicken. But I guess it was quite a shock. I went out for a run. I had apparently tried to go for a few runs in the week, and I complained about back pain. Um, I was midway through a run, apparently called my ex saying my back is really sore. Please come pick me up. And by the time she got there, I was gone. And the next thing I know, I woke up from ICU about almost 2 weeks later.
So whereabouts did it actually happen? Just on the street?
Yeah, I was running. Again, luckily, I stopped at a pub.
As South Africans are intended to do.
A kind of a blessing in disguise, but not. It was on a Sunday, on Mother's Day Sunday in 2017. It was also a day where I think England was playing football. So when my saviors called the ambulances, they firstly thought I was a gentleman that maybe had a few too many drinks rather than a runner. But when they said, "Look, he isn't running gear, he's not been inside," then I think they're a bit more serious about it. So yeah, I have no memory of it. I do every now and then get a few kind of snapshots from a few memories here and there, but other than that, nothing else.
So what happened when they came and picked you up, as it were? What had happened?
Well, I didn't have any CPR. The people that found me thought I was breathing, but obviously I was having agonal breathing. I think the first time I had CPR was actually when the ambulance crew arrived. I believe I was down for about 16 minutes before they got my heart going again. I had fallen forward on my head, so I had a big old bash on my head. I actually read the report this morning, funny enough. And they were kind of treating that and trying to get my heart back up and running. They rushed me down to Brighton, where they fitted a stent, and I was in ICU for 2 weeks before I woke up. I'm very confused. I mean, I didn't really know why I was there. They eventually moved me to the cardiac ward, and I didn't understand why people were in and out in 2 days, and I was there for, a good 10 days afterwards. So very confusing kind of time in my life. And the memory was really, really difficult. I think because I've been down for such a long time, the oxygen deprivation had a real effect on me and still does now. And my memory is still an ongoing issue for me. But yeah, scary times. I was dead set on resigning my job and, giving up everything. And, it's a time I don't want to have to go through again because nothing made sense. Everything was backwards.
So when you were in hospital, you said, was it just about 2 weeks? Did they do much investigations on you, or is it just monitor you? You said you had a stent, so was it clear cut that you had a blockage?
I believe so. Unfortunately, my memory of the hospital days is not especially very good. It's very, very vague. So I was in ICU for 2 weeks. They said there was a blockage, so they put a stent in to fix that. What I also remember hearing is that's the only place that there was a problem. Generally, the rest of my arteries were fairly clean. So I think sounds like a bit of a one-hit wonder or one-hit unwonder. Not sure what you call it, but bad luck.
Yeah. I mean, did they give you any reason for your artery blocking them? Was it related to your diet and lifestyle, or was it stress, or what?
It's a very good question. I think it's probably a combination of everything. I have engaged with the lipid clinic in Brighton, and they did do tests on me. They said to me I had some funny, weird genetic marker that does cause high cholesterol. So I guess that's probably ultimately the main reason for it. But not much else. They once they've got you marked in your solution there, they tend to move on from it. So I'm now trying to do the best I can at keeping healthy, keeping fit, and generally eating healthy as well.
So when they discharged you from the hospital, were you given any medications or a rehab program or anything like that?
Yeah, medication is something I never really took before. Suddenly I had this bag of meds to take. I'd had some seizures in the ambulance, so they gave me some anti-seizure medication. And then I think just what everybody else has, bisoprolol, aspirin, they put me on statins, they put me on ramipril, and something else I can't remember. They kind of didn't give me much more than that at the time. I did get cardiac rehab because I was lucky I had a heart attack. But I found cardiac rehab very disheartening in some ways because there I was, 40 years young with a bunch of 80-year-old people doing very funny, weird exercises. I didn't really see the value at that time of it. Again, I was probably lucky. I did get through the NHS a little bit of access to, I think, like a neuropsychologist that came to my house. They also provided me with occupational therapy at the time, but I think it was the timing was completely wrong because after 3 months they were dead set in getting me back to work, and my brain was still trying to make sense of what 1 + 1 was most of the time.
So you had occupational therapy through the NHS, did you?
That as well, yes.
I believe that'd be quite unusual. What hospital were you at then?
Brighton.
Okay, well, that's good to hear that they're on the ball with that sort of thing. But you just think the timing was not appropriate for where you were.
Yeah, I think the occupational therapist, I mean, she was very good. She did try and help me out, but I don't really think they understood the the cardiac arrest side. They didn't understand the brain injury side. She kind of went through the motions, and after the period I had, it was like, right, you're good to go to work. We're going to sign you off. You can go back to work now. And she'd leave, and I would have forgotten what we spoke about 5 minutes later. So I think bless them, they tried their best to help out, but the timing of it was the wrong timing. I could have done with that much, much, much later. Probably 6, 7, 8, 9 months later would have been more appropriate for the level of therapy that they gave me.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of state were you in at that time in terms of, physical and what you could actually do?
Fatigued, massively fatigued. I was spending, I'd reckon almost a whole day on the sofa. I would struggle walking for 5 or 10 minutes. I walked to a post box that was 50 yards down the road from my house. I'd come back and I'd sleep for 2 or 3 hours afterwards. So fatigue was a real problem. I think memory wise, just basically trying to figure out life was a real challenge. I'd come out with real deficits around the cognitive side, and I didn't understand it. So I was fighting it, trying to still be the old me and do the things I used to do, and getting quite frustrated when I couldn't do some basic things I used to do. So I think generally, probably emotionally in a really bad place, cognitively in a really bad place, and fatigue was a massive issue for me.
What environment had you been discharged to?
Back home, but I guess I was on my own a lot. My ex did take off some time to take care of me, but she had to go to work, so I would be on my own for a big part of the day. And what I did was sleep, and I would have the occupational therapist come over for half an hour, and they go, and I'd sleep again. So that was kind of my recovery for probably a good 18 months, was just sleep, recover, try and recover, and trying to make sense of life.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally understand that because that's what I did for a long, long time as well. Watch daytime TV every now and again, which drives you mad.
I've watched every single box set under the sun. I don't want to watch any more box sets. I've had enough.
It's true. I never watch TV during the day anymore, so it's a good cure for that, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
So what happened next? And so I think in that post that you made, or maybe a post later, you wrote that you tried to return to work in February 2018, and you do say, within my view, disastrous results. Could you sort of tell me about how come you by the sounds of it, you were still in a pretty bad way, but how did you come to decide that you should go back to work?
I guess there was an element of occupational therapy that I'd gone through that kind of told me I should go back to work. I was not enjoying being at home, being alone. I think the social, the not having social life around you was very difficult for me. And also, I was being encouraged by people around me to get back to work. So I thought, great idea, I'll go back to work. My boss at the time was also a good friend of mine. He'll take care of me. I'd spoken to the HR department about going back to work, but going back in a very quiet way, just reading emails for a couple of weeks, and just really gentle, let back into the environment. When I got there, it was very obvious that they haven't really spoken to each other about what I'm going to be doing. My boss again is a friend, but he is used to working hard, delivering hard, and he gave me a lot of work to do. And I just felt completely overwhelmed by it all. My expectation was I would go there, just almost reintegrate into the organization, speak to people, check my emails, make a few phone calls. The next thing I know, I was writing job descriptions and having to plan projects, and my brain was just not in a position to cope with that. So I spent 2 days working, and then I kind of crashed and burned, and I told them I couldn't come back.
Uh-huh. And how did they take that?
Um, they were good about it. I think they probably took my criticism a bit on the chin. I did say that you guys really hadn't spoken to each other about what my expectations were. HR really didn't do anything to even check on me if I was okay. They let me go in and kind of step back, which was not really what I was hoping for. I was hoping for a little bit more hand holding and just a bit more care. I mean, I'd gone through quite a major thing. My brain was still in a real mess, and it would have been nice to have a bit of TLC and back into the work environment.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the work they were giving you, was it the same sort of stuff that you was doing before, or was it
Yeah,
different?
not very dissimilar. They gave me, I was managing teams, so I got involved again with the kind of the job description process, and I had quite a big list of things I had to deliver by the end of the week, and I wasn't capable of doing that. I couldn't focus enough. I cognitively I was still really struggling, and it became quite obvious to me that, when I'd finish working 4 hours and I'd be crashed on the sofa for the rest of the day without being able to even move. So it wasn't, I wanted to try it out. It was a good thing to try, but also, I realized very soon that it wasn't the right thing for me at that time.
Mm-hmm. So what you say, were you working from home for quite a while?
I did work from home. They wanted me to come to the office. Look, if you want me to come into the office, there's no way I can commute almost the 4 hours up and down, work for 4 hours and survive a day. This wasn't going to happen.
Uh-huh. So you knew your limitations then?
Absolutely, yeah. Which I'd communicated to them, but again, I think maybe the understanding of what I'd said wasn't there. I had said to them, look, I cannot commute every day to the city. The commute itself is an absolute killer. Then you want me to work 4 hours? I can't do that. But yeah, I think expectations was a little bit different to what I had asked them to prepare for.
So what happened next then?
Well, at that point, I think is where the insurance company got a little bit touchy about it, and they then suggested I should get proper occupational therapy. So they engaged a company that is a occupational therapy company, and I had occupational therapy, I reckon, for about, I've got to guess, about 4, 5, 6 months. Unfortunately, when this all finished, my return to work meeting turned into making a redundant meeting. So they were good, the occupational therapists. They did try really hard. They taught me lots of coping mechanisms. I guess they taught me how to manage myself, manage my energy levels, take care of myself a little bit better rather than having a day where I do 10 things and run myself ragged, spreading out a little bit better and planning a bit better and resting a bit more and really having a better understanding of the situation I was in.
So I was going to say, I don't think, well, I haven't had any OT, and I don't hear about a lot of people getting occupational therapy. And for you to have had sort of 2 lots, it's quite remarkable, really. But would you be able to sort of explain what happens in a session, perhaps, or a couple of sessions? I know you have, for anyone who's interested, you did actually blog about this for us a couple of times. But it'd be good if you could sort of talk about what they went through.
Of course, yeah. If I can remember, memory is still a little bit of a problem. But I guess it was the first few sessions was really about setting some expectations, what I wanted to achieve, what they thought they could support me in. So we kind of agreed a bit of a framework around how we would do it, where we would go. And then the sessions would be really mixed. There was a lot of memory training. So they would give me a lot of words to try and remember, and they'd ask me to repeat them back, or they'd pictures that show you memorize the picture, they come back and ask you about the picture. And there was this constant reinforcing of trying to get the memory to work a bit better. And we had sessions on fatigue where we spoke about what fatigue is and really how to try and manage it better and how it applies to me. And when they would come back the next week, we kind of rerun that and see, well, how have you dealt with this? How have you done that? They would then go back to the memory again. And it was a lot of different things they were doing to try and, I think probably prickle the brain a bit to work a bit better, but also teaching me how to deal with the signs of fatigue and how to deal with the cognitive problems that I had. And it was very good. I think it was good from my point of view to understand really what I was going through and learning how to handle the situation and how to take care of fatigue and, not to get too down if I can't remember something, because it is just part of what we all go through, I suspect. So generally, I think overall it was good. It's a shame it didn't go into actually going back to work and still having that support that they would have offered me. But I think as a exercise in helping me out at that time, it was very, very useful. And I still apply the same things. When I get tired, I now know how to handle it. I know how to see when tiredness is coming before and managing it. Whereas before I would just have pushed through and broken myself and have been in a bed for a couple of days afterwards.
Could you sort of give anyone listening any of those tips or strategies that you use?
I guess it is very much an awareness. So the thing I used to do is really fill my days with lots of things and try and push lots of things into one day, which I now know if I do it now, no matter how well I handle it, I will still get fatigued. So spreading out things, not doing too much in one go. When I did a bit of work for my company from home, and things like, I was reading documents, but it is cognitively really challenging. So read for a bit and then just step up, stand away, take a breather, just walk away for a few minutes and then come back again. So just give yourself a little bit of a break to give your brain some time to recover and refocus again. So it's really about managing it, not pushing yourself too hard, recognizing when fatigue is coming and making an allowance for it before it hits you. Because generally, when it hits you, it's a little bit too late.
So were you finding things like focusing and reading and maybe how is your speech as well? Because they tend to be quite often connected.
Yes, I've learned lots of words from you, Paul. I think aphasia is something I struggle with. So finding the right word, I get quite a lot. Reading has improved massively. I've always enjoyed reading. So, but when I started reading, I would read half a page and go, I've got no idea what I've read. But I've kept on going. So I think it's just keep on reading, keep on reading, keep on reading, and it does improve over time. Aphasia, I still struggle with. I often find myself in the middle of something going, I don't actually know what that word is, but then I'll explain what the word is rather than trying to find the word. It's also something they taught me. So rather than busting your brain trying to remember it, just change and explain what it is, because most people can then usually work with that. So yeah, it's
But
ongoing.
you talk very, you're quite fluent now. So it's obviously you've worked hard on it and your brain has recovered to a reasonable degree.
Yes, I think if I compare myself to where I was, when I came out of my hospital experience, I have gone quite a long distance. I have worked really hard at improving myself. I am very much a go-getter. I tend to, push myself to a point where I break very often, and that, from a fatigue point of view, is not ideal. But it has helped me to recover in some ways. So I'm not a person that can. I like a challenge. I like pushing myself, and that's the way I seem to learn the best, is by pushing myself to breaking point, figuring it out, pulling it back, and then
You
adapting
said you,
accordingly.
you, you like a challenge, and I know you've got back to doing some running. So how's that all gone?
At the moment, not so good. I've got a bit of a sore knee for the last few months. I'm not doing that much running, but it's something I really enjoy. It's nice going out to getting some fresh air. It was something I was doing before I had my cardiac arrest, and it's a bit of normality for me now post cardiac arrest. But I'm keen to do a bit more. I know Paul Alexander did the Ride London this year, and somewhere along the way that's going to be on my radar as well, jumping on the bicycle and doing that. But there's lots of things I want to go and do. I don't want the cardiac arrest to define my life. There's things that I was going to do before cardiac arrest, and I'm definitely going to make sure I do them post cardiac arrest.
Has it changed your view though in how you achieve those, and perhaps adjusted your sights to not go quite so high, or go for heights in a different way?
That's a very good question. Unfortunately, by nature, I've been always been a very competitive person. So in some ways, I still have that. I really want to achieve as high as I can. I probably have lowered my sights a little bit. I'm probably a little bit more cautious in how I do things, but I'd say that's only slightly. I'm still the first one jumping off the bridge if there's a bridge there to be jumped off. I'm not sure that will ever change.
Hopefully, there's somewhere to land on when you jump off of this bridge. So, or was it?
It's an optional extra.
So there's always been people, or there's been several people in the group talking about jumping out of a plane for to raise money for us. You'll be there for that, will you?
Yes, I have done it before, so
Have
I'm
you?
quite keen to do it. Oh yes, I've done some crazy things in my life, and as I said, I'm quite keen to keep on doing them because I've died once. What do I have to lose? I might as well make the most of it.
Has it changed your view of death, if you like, or dying, or coming to the end of your time on this planet?
I've always lived my life to the fullest. I've always enjoyed squeezing every drop out of life. In some ways, it's probably reinforced that more because life is so precious, and I would much rather experience everything life can offer than being afraid and not doing those things. It's such a precious thing to live in. again, for me now, the thing that's really quite topical is if I hadn't survived, I wouldn't have seen my son grow up, and I would have been able to do the things I do with him now. So it slowed me down a bit. I've got more things to kind of deal with, fatigue and cognitive problems, but it doesn't stop me from wanting to do those things and enjoying life and making the most of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of those things you said, although you're not running at the moment, one of the things that you did, I believe, earlier in the year was running, and you did a race with your saviours. So how was all that? That sounds like
That was last year. That was
oh,
phenomenal. Yeah, that's the race that I raised the money for you guys or for SCA. I kind of wanted to meet the people that were involved with saving me. So I've met the non-medical people. I bumped into them through kind of organizing it, and I've actually become quite good friends with them. But I was really keen to also meet the ambulance crew. So that got done through the PSA, I remember the name now, but they organized for me to go out and meet the ambulance crew. We all had a big old cry, lots of hugs, and they all said to me they don't often get, or they've never met anybody that they've saved or survived cardiac arrest. So for them, they were quite emotional. One of the girls told me that she'd lost her dad when he was, when she was the same age as my son had been. So it was quite an emotional journey, but one of them is quite a keen runner. I said, well, I like running as well. And so we agreed to do the Reigate 10K. One of the girls has never run before, but she dragged herself running and she finished it up. And it was such an emotional thing to do because, running is not the cause of my cardiac arrest, but, it was quite topical when it happened to me. And doing it with the people that saved me was just I think almost closing a circle. So it was a really good time out. I still have contact with them, and I'm definitely keen to do a bit more of that.
So did you run all the way together?
We again, I blame brain injury on that. I probably should have stayed with them, but I was like, right, I want to get myself a good time, so I raced around. I did wait for them at the end. Again, I really should have stayed with them, but at that time, things don't always compute. You kind of forget about the niceties of life. But they all made it through, and we had probably about 10 pints each after, which was fantastic, just to celebrate.
Oh, you deserved it by the sound. Was it 10 pints each or between you?
Probably not quite each, but there was a lot of very happy people drinking lots of beer.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, I always say that meeting your saviours is such a great experience that I think if you can do it, that people should do it because it's a win-win. Because I don't know about you, I felt like something had been lifted off of my shoulders. I don't know, it was a really weird experience, but an emotional experience. What about you?
Yeah, very much so. I think it was seeing the people that saved your life and when I saw them, I started crying. I'm a bit of I like crying in any way, so that's not really a surprise. But, hearing their side of the story and saying, what they found when they found me and, the reality of it was quite scary. But then also hearing their life stories and just how it's affected them. And I think being able to meet them and then meet me for them was that they didn't know what happened to me. They wasn't sure if I'd survived, and seeing me there for them was amazing. And for me, seeing the people that saved me was also it was such an experience. So it's definitely something worthwhile doing. I don't think the paramedics get lots of real positive feedback, but for me, they were my heroes, and I think for them it was nice to have a bit of feedback
Absolutely.
and meet me. Obviously, I'm amazing, so they were really happy to meet me.
Yeah, you're very modest as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. I'm a South African, modest South African.
No, but you're right. I think they get from what I understand, there's they don't always get those wins when they don't. I mean, I think I saw one of the sort of 999 programs that's on TV, and there was a paramedic, and I think she'd done it 15 times, and that when they were happened to be filming it, she got her first ROSC, which was quite amazing, really. But it shows you how many failures they have to go, or not failures, not non-successes, if you like, before they get a good result. And it's worth us letting them know that we're okay once they've actually gone away and I don't know. I don't know if they go through a debrief or what they think about afterwards, but because I know we're just part of the job, but the impact that they've had on our life and our families' lives is just it's life changing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think one of the girls that was involved in my saving, she's been there for 20 years and she's never, ever, ever met a survivor or never had a survivor from a cardiac arrest. So I think for them, it probably reinforced that what they do is, fantastic. And for us meeting those people, giving them a hug and a cry, and it's absolutely it's a bit of not a life changer, but it's a real fulfillment. I think being able to do that.
Absolutely. And some of the other things you've been doing lately is sort of putting out leaflets in some of your local hospitals, which is really good. Thank you very much for doing that. And you're going to be hitting any more?
Yes, I am. I've got Sad has sent me a whole lot of leaflets today in my flat. I'm planning on going around some of the doctor surgeries and just give them out. I went to the hospital here. Wasn't quite sure how to really tackle it, but I got myself into the right areas. I think I spoke to the psychology department. I can't remember, occupational therapy, I think it was actually. And I walked in and started crying. And I gave them the leaflets and they had a good chat with me. And I guess I think finding this group for me, has been such a lifesaver. Before I found the group, the information that I was given was very, very sketchy. It was all more relevant to heart attacks. Finding this group with everything that you've done has been just fantastic. The information that's on there, the support from the people, meeting the people. I guess I've made some friends through this group. It's been really, really fantastic. And what I want to be able to do is by giving the leaflets out, if there's only one person that actually gets to the group, makes their life better, it is absolutely worth it. It has been for me a real lifesaver, and I'd like to be able to do the same for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great. That was how I set out, actually. It's funny you saying that if I could just help one other person, then my goal would have been met. So it's great that just passing that luck on, that information on just to one other person can have, open up a whole new world. Like you say, you've met loads of people and you've got some new friends, and also you've come to a couple of the meetups as well, which I hope you found invaluable. Because last time you weren't actually going to come to the Not Alone meetup, were you?
No, I had some personal challenges around that, but I was kind of convinced a little bit by you and by some of the other people to come along, and I'm really happy I went. I was not going to come because I didn't want to. It was more just circumstances, but I'm really pleased I went. I've made some more good friends up there. There's some absolutely cracking people in the group, and it's very nice to see other people's situations, share stories, have a laugh, have a cry, have a few beers, have a boogie, and then we do it all again next year.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can have more meetups that are going to be regular and smaller ones. And I know you've been involved with doing that with the people in your local area, haven't you? You've had a couple of meetups in a pub.
Correct, yes. Definitely we'll be doing a few more. Actually, I reached out today earlier to Paul and Claire saying we've got to sort something out again. It's always good. I think we've had a few people come to the meetups and they haven't been to the big meetup yet, but it's just people come there and I think it's just a bit of a community feel and feeling accepted, and other people that's also at the same as you. It's such a binding thing, and it makes us all feel normal, I think, which is really, really, really important.
Absolutely, and finding normal is quite difficult, as many of us will know. I think we're coming to the end now. I was just wondering if you've got any sort of tips or advice that you give to other survivors that are just sort of starting their journey or partly along the way, or maybe having trouble getting back into work.
Sure. I guess the most important thing is just, I think everybody says, be kind to yourself. It is a very difficult, long journey. We all respond differently to it. Listen to your body. There's a few people that I've spoken to that I've said, you've just got to give yourself time. Don't push yourself too much. It will get better, but it takes time. And I realize this is not a week-long journey. This is years. But I don't think we ever get back to the way we were, but there's no reason we can't go a hell of a long way. And we have an opportunity to start life again and make the most of it. and enjoy life. It's such a precious thing.
It is indeed. It is indeed. There's some very wise words there, Willem, and thank you very much for chatting with me. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for everything you've done.